Welcome back to GTD. I'm Mike Farmer here with Keegan Miller, and it was Coca-Cola 600 weekend this past weekend, and we had a good one. One of the best races of the year, in my opinion. I'm maybe a little bit biased because I was there. I got to witness it in person, and it seemed like there was always passing happening at this place. And at the end of the day, the guy who did the most passing came home with the win. Ross Chastain completed the last to first challenge here at the Coke 600, taking home his first win of the year and Trackhouse's first win of the year. And what I think is a fairly surprising winner considering the speed of those cars so far this season. But Keegan, you were watching this race from home, so what did you see from Chastain in this one? What did you see from this race, and how did you feel about the racing overall this year in Charlotte?
Yeah, well, first of all, you mentioned, the Coke 600, and it's just that weekend of the year, Memorial Day weekend. We have the Coke 600, the 500 in Indianapolis, and Monaco. And I can confidently say, and I don't think anybody can come at me with this, the Coke 600 in NASCAR had the best racing of any of the series, major series this weekend, which is a great win for NASCAR. Everyone, obviously, the Indy 500 kind of stands alone, and it's its own thing, and it brings a lot of fans that aren't even Indy fans. And then
Yeah,
Monaco is kind of just done
a
this over the
train.
years. Right. So the Coke 600 did have the best racing, and not only was it better than those two series, but it's one of the best races we've had all year. And we've talked about this intermediate package and how consistently good it's been, and the race it delivers. And this one wasn't a swing and miss. Like we had, what was it? Maybe was it Vegas? We had one boring intermediate race earlier this year, and everyone was like, "Oh, are we going to start doing this again?" No, intermediates are fine. Charlotte proved that. It was great battles for the leads. Pretty much, there was a little dull period when Byron just had a NASA spaceship and just pulled away to like a 10-second lead for a little bit. But other than that, you had racings for the lead, and you mentioned Chastain, the trackhouse speed. I've kind of been seeing a little trend with Chastain over the last few weeks. He's consistently been getting like Texas. He's just been clawing and clawing and clawing his way back. And he's here now. He's back. He's in victory
Yeah,
lane. I think that's going to be a huge morale boost for Trackhouse. Maybe get Suarez SVG had a top 15 weekend in Charlotte, but I think really it's going to really push Suarez to kind of, okay, I got to perform now. I can't blame it on the equipment because we're back in victory lane. So I got to, put pressure on myself and perform here. But yeah, congratulations to Chastain. I saw this coming a few weeks ago, like just over the course of the few weeks he's had.
I
But
can't
an
believe I let you have
incredible
dark
drive for
horse for him at Texas. You're never getting that ever again.
him. Well, no, not anymore. Yeah, now that he's in victory lane and he's
Yeah,
kind of had but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but you mentioned the rest of Trackhouse. SVG with the top 15 today. I think by far his best race on an oval and was there pretty much all
Oh
night.
yeah.
He didn't just appear there after incidents, had decent speed. Daniel Suarez is running in the back half of the top 20 until he got taken out in the wreck with Ryan Blaney. That just kind of a rough night for Suarez in that case. But
Yeah.
the speed of Trackhouse, you're right, has gotten so much better over the last few weeks. And Chastain now is at the point where we can consider him a threat for some of these races week in and week out. And you mentioned the period of the race where Byron is kind of up front just leading. I don't know what the cameras were showing, but as Byron was out there with his 9-second lead, there was an absolutely incredible battle for eighth the entire time. And like Noah Gragson, Chase Elliott, those guys back there at the back half of the top 10 were all going at it for about 60 laps. So I don't know if that was showed or not, but it was
It
some
was
great
it was
racing.
showed a little bit. It
Okay.
was showed a little bit. They were doing a lot of strategy talking just about pit windows and fuel management and when to get tires and split. I mean, as Charlotte, especially with the four stages now, which I
Yeah.
wish they'd do away with this because it's just 8 50 lap stints. You
Yeah,
just split the stage in half every time and you're good.
this race proved, I think, that you don't have to have all these cautions for it to be a good race. The race ended on what, like a 65 lap green flag run, and you got an organic battle for the lead at the end of it. So you
Yeah.
can have good racing for the win without these stages. But talking about a little bit what the broadcast is talking about leads us into this is the first race for NASCAR on Prime Video. Yes, Prime
Yeah.
Video. And I obviously was at the race, so I didn't get a chance to see the broadcast, but as someone who was watching from home, what did you see? Do you think it was good? I know the reception's been largely positive so far. How did you feel about NASCAR on Prime?
So to start off, I think they went live on the app, on the Prime app, an hour before the race started. So they went live at 4 Central Time for me, and the race started kind of at 5. So they had a full hour block that you could watch of just, and you described it as like a college game day type experience with the desk and everything. And that's what you saw as a viewer. I mean, the crowd behind him wasn't near as big as College Game Day and SEC or whatever, but it'll get there. Especially, it's just different with NASCAR because at football games are outside the stadium. You know what I'm saying? So they have
Yeah.
literally every fan that's in the environment can just walk up and go. NASCAR is a little different. They're inside the track, and that may change depending on what track they go to. Like if they're at a Bristol or a Martinsville, you're not putting that inside the stadium. And they don't have a Bristol or Martinsville, but that'll change. They'll have some outside of the track, so I think the crowd will get better, especially when more people realize what's going on. The personality was Carl Edwards. Oh my gosh, he has been missed. He was so good. You should go back and just watch his segments. Every time the camera was on him, he just embodied like what it is to be a NASCAR driver, but also a NASCAR fan. And he's still learning the next gen car. He said that because he never get to drive it. He was kind of out of the sport, kind of jaded from the sport a little bit. So he's really taken Corey LaJoie in to kind of explain to him how this car works. And so he's just like one of us watching the sport. And it was incredible just to watch him kind of break down his what he thinks is happening, and then Corey LaJoie can kind of add on, well, in the next gen car there's this. That was incredible. Obviously, the guys in the booth have been there, done that with Dale Jr., Adam Alexander, and Letarte. Fantastic combination. They really played off each other well. There's a lot of good banter because you know how Dale Jr. is just a kid with ADHD who just sees squirrel, and so they were like they knew that was going to happen, so they played off that really well. The only really critique I have with the broadcast is the ticker, I guess, the scorecard on the left. If your driver wasn't in the top 10, it was kind of hard to find where they were because they would just flip through because they section off top 10 and then everyone else. They really flipped through that quickly, and it was hard to kind of look through and find your driver. And then after every kind of rotation, they would throw an ad on the screen, like Coca-Cola or an Amazon Prime or whatever, and the ad would take up the entire scorecard on the left, and you were just out of commission for about 5 seconds, and then come right back. So you had to sit a few cycles to find where Jimmie Johnson was or someone else.
He was last and then he wrecked. It was very sad. Let's go ahead and talk about that. 700th start for Jimmie Johnson this weekend at Charlotte, and I was excited. I had my 84 hat on. I had my Connor Zilic shirt on. I was ready to go to support my two favorite drivers in the sport, and then they crashed into each other, and oh my goodness. I bet I had at least 20 people that day during the race and after the race were like, oh, rough day for you. And I was like, yep, correct. So as a huge Jimmie fan my entire life, just seeing him, because he qualified 17th, and I was like, okay, there is upside here.
And Legacy's had speed.
Yeah, and Legacy did have speed. Eric Jones, John Hunter, and Nemechek were top 10 for a lot of the day, and so at the start of the race, Jimmie just started falling back. I'm like, okay, we can make some adjustments. The car will get better. And then he came down pit road and then just fell like a rock all the way to the back, was fighting Cody Ware, and I was just, at that point, I was like, okay, I just don't go a lap down, please. Just finish on the lead lap. And he was making it. He was still on the lead lap, and then Connor Zilic is behind him. Jimmie got, I think loose off the front of Zilic's car, came up, hit the wall, came back down into Zilic, and just a bad time. Not how you want to see 700th, and in my opinion, last. I doubt he makes another start. I think that's a good round number to end on. So just unfortunate that a career like that ends that way, if it is indeed the end. And then for Connor Zilic, making his first start, first weekend back after a back injury, congrats. Here's 900 miles of racing. And to his credit, made it through it, finished 23rd, only one lap down, which I think is fairly respectable.
He drove more miles than Kyle Larson did on Sunday over the course of the weekend. But now that the obligatory Jimmie Johnson talk is out of the way, we haven't even talked about the finish yet. We're 8 minutes into this thing and haven't even talked about the crazy finish that we alluded to earlier, and that was Ross Chastain getting it done. But how did he do it, Micah?
Well, he followed in Byron's tire tracks for a while. You could tell Chastain wanted that high line and was kind of half a groove down below Byron, especially in 3 and 4. That car was great in 3 and 4 all night, especially at the end of the race. It felt like no matter where he ran in those two corners, he could gain on Byron down the front stretch. And eventually, they catch up to Denny Hamlin, who had to pit an extra time because it didn't get his second gas can plugged in. So Denny Hamlin is now just chilling in front of the leaders. And William Byron is like, not another fast Toyota in front of me after the Tyler Reddick incident that had happened previously. And so Ross Chastain closed up to the back of him. At first, Hamlin kind of blocked Chastain in 3 and 4. I was like, oh no, Denny Hamlin's going to get in the way of Chastain. It's this old rivalry coming back. Byron's going to win the race. Keegan's going to get a correct pick. I'm going to be very sad. And then Chastain takes the slingshot into turn one, shoots the gap between Byron and Hamlin, essentially through the middle, cuts to the apex of the corner, slides back up off the corner, gets in front of Byron. Ross Chastain home free to the victory. I was already standing up at that point in the grandstands, but I was audibly just, what a move as he did that into turn one. It was absolutely incredible. I thought there was no way he was getting by Byron at that point, because obviously from where I'm sitting, I couldn't see there was a gap. So I thought he was just going to like obliterate Hamlin on the way through, which would have, I think, also been kind of funny. But it was a great move, and I think obviously there's the slight caveat of if Tyler Reddick doesn't Tokyo drift into the wall, then Byron is probably never back that far, but still, great move from Chastain. All the respect to Ross Chastain. Just great drive for the last 60 or so laps.
Yes, it was a very close move, by the way. Even seeing every camera angle they showed on TV, still very close. But I'm glad you mentioned Tyler Reddick, because I have two questions for you. And the first one we've kind of answered, and it'll be really quick. And the second one I'll save because I think that'll be more of a talking point. If Tyler Reddick doesn't get loose and front bumper into the wall and still drove forward somehow. If that doesn't happen, does William Byron win the race? I think yes. I think you could agree with that. I think it would come down to the white flag. I think they'd be battling, but like you said,
never know, because Ross Chastain on the back bumper of William Byron, who knows what happens if he gets there.
Right. And I think, like you said, Chastain was kind of not wanting to run a different path than Byron. He really wanted what Byron had, and it was quicker. Even following him, it was quicker. So I think it'd come down to like a last lap, kind of stall out in dirty air, or try to go down the track in turn 3 and 4 and make something happen. Just don't. But my other talking point is if Denny Hamlin gets all the fuel he's supposed to get on a pit stop and doesn't have to stop again, do we have a 3-way battle? Does Denny Hamlin win the race? What's your thoughts on that?
I think we have a 3-way battle, but I also think that Denny Hamlin comes out third. Because you look at when the two leaders were on the back of Hamlin at the end of that race, there's no reason for Hamlin not to be pushing in that scenario, and they were still catching him. So I know Hamlin's not fighting for the lead, but I think the fact that over the last 10 laps or so, Chastain and Byron were clearly quicker than Hamlin, I think Hamlin would have been able to hang on, because I think out of those three, his car worked the best on the bottom, so he'd have the biggest advantage with clean air. I think he'd be able to kind of stick with them, but I think he would have come out third. I think his car was slightly worse towards the end of the race than those other two, but he would have been right there.
Yeah, I don't... God, with those... I mean, obviously Byron's Byron. We know what type of driver he is. But just having Chastain and Hamlin in the last 5 laps of a race, kind of in a 3-way battle, I would have... that would have been so fun just to see what those two guys would have done. You know, like
those two wreck, and then AJ Allmendinger passes William Byron for the win on the restart.
Yeah, it would have been something hectic with those two guys, and then William Byron probably would have just been a bystander, got caught just because he was in the lead. But that would have been fun to see. But now we get to talk about my favorite part of the Coke 600 and something I'm very excited to see in the future, and that's Carson Hocevar. He is the most fun driver to watch. He's like a Shohei Ohtani for baseball or Lamar Jackson for the NFL. I mean, he is so fun to watch. If there could be a camera just on him throughout the field, I'd probably watch that over like the normal broadcast. He is HBO so Max. Fun to watch, and he is always just racing. Like, he just races the entire time, and it was incredible. Now brings us to the not so incredible part.
He was getting after it the entire race, was up there, and I will say, shout out to the Chili's marketing department. Every time that car went by, I had the Ride the Dente riff go through my head, and it was very annoying. So, shout out Chili's marketing department, you've done your job. But he was right up there in the top 3, got onto the front row, and I was texting you about this. I was like, okay, how many spots do we think Hocevar's pit crew loses this time? And they gained him one and got him onto the front row. And I was like, okay, now we're going to see how hard the Dente can be ridden up front. And absolutely
apparently too hard.
Yeah, the Dente was ridden too hard, and I guess they did what Corey LaJoie did and tried to fuel the car with margaritas, and it blew up. And I feel so bad for Hocevar. He was right there, had one of the best cars, and from where I was, it looked like he had a huge tire rub and his wheel had gone off, and I was like, oh, that's why the pit stop was so fast, because it didn't tighten the wheel. But turns out it was just the engine. Engine let go, blew up. Caught out Chris Buescher randomly, who just was plowing into the back of him. It was like, oh my gosh, poor Chris. But Hocevar, I just feel awful for him. This guy cannot catch a break this year. It feels like every time he's fast, something goes wrong. even all the way back to Phoenix, qualified super well in that race, is running top 5, got caught out in pit strategy, instantly gets bundled into the wall. Just guy can't quite seem to figure it out, but he obviously has speed, and the finishes have to come eventually. But at least tonight, you look at all the stage points he gets from tonight with his top 10 finishes in those early stages. I think you can at least take that and say, okay, not a total failure, but that's just incredibly painful for him. Although Spire still ended up getting a car in the top 10 with the late charging Michael McDowell in 7th.
Yeah, and what was incredible from Hocevar's car was Chastain, when you saw at the end of the race, was very good on the high side, not very good on the low side. Same with Byron. Byron could run the low side if he needed to, like when he passed Hamlin for the lead that one time, where he just hung back, got off the gas early, and shot it down the inside. He could make it work. Hocevar, no matter where he had to run, I think he was the best all-around car, top to bottom of the track. Bottom groove, middle groove, upper groove, half a lane below, half a lane above someone else. He just made it work. And it's at the point where I don't know if that was the setup, if that's him. I probably a little bit of both, if we had to be honest. But it was just very fun and incredible to watch.
Yeah, the Spire speed on intermediates is definitely there right now. They're absolutely quick. But before we kind of get out of here, wrap up, I do want to go through kind of your top finishers through here. Chase Briscoe coming home 3rd. Best race for the 19 team, I think, all year. Had the pole, fell back, and then really made a hard charge late at the end. AJ Allmendinger started 5th, finished 4th. Is that the best race in Cup for Colleague all time?
I can't think of another one. I can't, disprove what you're saying.
I think that, for me, that's the best Colleague has ever done in a Cup race. And AJ Allmendinger, shout out to him. He was incredible. Then in 5th, the best story of the night, Brad Keselowski finally gets a top 10 and makes it a top 5 too. Started 35th. And apparently this is what RFK needs to get cars in the top 10. It's 600-mile-long races since they qualify so bad. They can finally make it up there. Great to see Brad finally in the top 10, though.
He had to get shoved back to the back of the pack on point, too, and had to work his way. He worked his way up, had to go back, worked his way back up. So pretty good from Brad. Look, this is what we talked about last week in the podcast. Did he win the All-Star race or whatever? No. But momentum. NASCAR's a momentum-based sport. It had some team morale boosters, and here we are. Now he's got a legit top 5 in the Coke 600, which is one of the hardest races to do so. And, who knows where we're going to go from here. But I think this is just a great starting point for the 6 team, and we're finally going to see. I mean, it took a while last year, It wasn't until Darlington we really saw him, uber competitive, and he won that race. So who knows what the 6 has in store for the rest of the season.
Yeah, after a race like that, he's all the way up to 32nd in points. Yikes.
Yeah.
So going through the rest of the top 10, Chase Elliott came home 6th. Classic Chase Elliott. Honestly, just existed in the back half of the top 10 all day. Took advantage of some guys in front of him making mistakes. Comes home 6th. Michael McDowell, briefly mentioned in 7th. Kind of came out of nowhere, to be honest. Wasn't really fast all day. Just appeared in the top 10. Christopher Bell finished 8th. I think that's about where that car was all day. That was about the speed he had. Had some brief top 5 moments, but kind of fell back towards the end. Ryan Preece, RFK's second car in the top 10, finishes 9th. And then a guy that I want to spotlight here for a bit, Noah Gragson, coming home 10th and ran better than that for most of the day. Started 8th, had a fast number 4 car. I think that's his best performance, not only of the season. I would say that's one of his best performances in his Cup career. Looked really solid all day, kept up with the track. Great run for Noah Gragson. And then quickly to finish out your top 15, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. remains the picture of consistency somehow, comes home 11th, still no DNFs on the year. Josh Berry comes home 12th after being pretty bad most of the day, to be honest. Rebounded, finds his way back into the top 15. Eric Jones, 13th, kind of a what-could-have-been day for Legacy Motor Club. Eric Jones was top 10 most of the day. John Henry Nemechek was top 5 for most of the first 2 stages, and then fell back on pit road, had a penalty, knocked him all the way down to 27th. SVG, we've mentioned a couple times, top 15, not just at an oval, but at the Coke 600, comes home 14th, and then rounding out your top 15 is Kyle Busch.
Yeah, Josh Berry ran better than all three Penske cars. Now Blaney got caught up in a wreck, but still he ran better than Cindric and Logano, who have both been really decent cars. Especially Cindric's been having one of his better careers in his young season, or a better seasons in one of his young career. But yeah, he outperformed all three of those cars, and who knows where Blaney would have ended up. If I'm sure Blaney probably would have ended up top 10 if he kept going because he had a car capable. And then SVG, we mentioned Ross Chastain and Trackhouse at the beginning of the show, and kind of the pressure that puts on Daniel Suarez. You got road courses coming up, so SVG is probably going to end up in victory lane again this year. Trackhouse always comes prepared on road courses. You see Ross Chastain run well at road courses, runs well at Code all the time with the Trackhouse equipment. So, I mean, I think that just puts extra pressure, especially not to mention one of the road courses we're going to is in Mexico City. So they're going to come stacked and prepared for that race. And if they have, if they're choosing who gets the best equipment that weekend, obviously it would be Daniel Suarez. But that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, definitely. And then last little point here is obviously the double for Kyle Larson. And that did not go well. Spun at Indy, inexplicably downshifted while accelerating into turn 3. Don't really understand that. And then crashed in the Cup race twice and ended up 37th out of the race. So rough double for Kyle Larson. Didn't even complete the full Coke 600 distance over the day. Was just shy of the 600 total miles, I believe. I think he was at like 597. So rough day for the number 5/17 with Kyle Larson, the double. I don't know if we'll see that again next year. His contract reportedly isn't out yet. It was only a 2-year deal, so I don't know if we'll see him try it again, but I would love to see someone else at least complete the full 1,100 miles because I think it's just good for the sport when that happens. But any other thoughts on the double from this weekend?
Same thing as you. I do think he's done with the 2 years he's had. Of course, Rain messed up his better year. But just spinning himself out in both races and kind of it's not so much as far as like a team and sponsor avenue. It's not so much him wrecking himself out. It's the fact that once again he almost didn't even get a chance to do it. He was very close of even starting the Indy 500 with the rain and delays they had, and especially the pre-race safety car and whatever you want to call the Indy 500 was this year. It's just like it was such a tight window and almost difficult for him to do it again. That I think just the schematics of everything working out are just very difficult to accomplish nowadays. With all the extracurricular and all the TV stuff that has to go into running 2 races. If there was another driver to try it, I think it would have to be Christopher Bell. I think he would be the next guy a team looks at and goes, hey, we want you to do this. But then there's that lack of like Arrow, McLaren, and Chevy all obviously had their great relationship. Well, there's no Toyota in IndyCar. So there's lack of relationship. There's also the Joe Gibbs clause that he just doesn't historically let his drivers do that. Kyle Busch has talked about this.
I was going to say, I wouldn't rule out Kyle Busch now that he's in a Chevy.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be the guy after Christopher Bell, just because I don't see them getting a partnership, and then Joe Gibbs probably goes, let's not do that. Or Penske car. I think a Penske car or
Ryan Blaney double would be sick.
I don't even know if that's something he'd be down for. I don't
think he would. I don't think it would ever happen, but I think it'd be very cool. And then maybe one dark horse to do it would be an SVG, just because he kind of drives everything.
Yeah, I can see it. And Trackhouse can probably definitely get their foot in that door.
Trackhouse can definitely make that happen.
Yeah, they have a foot in every single racing door on the face of the earth, it seems like.
Trackhouse would do the triple,
kids,
send them to do their MotoGP team, and then go to Indy and back to the Coke 600.
Dude, I'm pretty sure the 2 kids down the street who race have like Trackhouse logos on their bikes. I think they're a Trackhouse racing team.
Yeah, they're the MotoGP team.
But that's all we have for the Coke 600. Make sure you turn into our Monaco review because that was also this weekend. A lot of good racing. But
if
also we have baseball to talk about. Yeah, but also we have baseball up and our preview for Nashville, the second race you can find on Amazon Prime. So Micah, you'll be able to watch one on Amazon Prime because you're not going to Nashville to watch it.
Shout out Amazon Prime. Thank you for a good broadcast.
Yep. Great paint scheme. Great episode. We'll see y'all next week.